Thank you all for being here this evening. My name's Paige Evans. I'm Artistic Director of Signature Theater, where we are about to produce this spring the world premiere of Dave Malloy's musical Octet, directed by Annie Tippe. So Dave and Annie first collaborated on a musical called Ghost Quartet, which is played in several venues around New York and elsewhere. And so we're going to start with a video clip of one of the songs from Ghost Quartet and then talk a little bit about that.
If you could be a bird, what kind of bird would you be?
A robin. If you could be a cat, what kind of cat would you be? A lion.
And if you could be a part of breakfast, what part of breakfast would you be?
The piece of toast.
And if you could be a dead guy, what kind of dead guy would you be?
I'd be a ghost. Don't wanna be a zombie, 'cause zombies are just good fun. Don't wanna be a vampire, 'cause they can't feel the sun. Don't wanna be a medical corpse, the stores would cut me wrong. No, I just wanna be a ghost and go ooh, ooh, ooh all night long. Don't wanna be a ghoul, 'cause I respect myself. Don't wanna be some ashes in a coffee can on the shelf. Don't wanna be a wraith, I could never be that strong. No, I just wanna be a ghost and go ooh, ooh, ooh all night long. Don't wanna be a poltergeist, 'cause I'm no movie star. Don't wanna be a lich, I'm not even sure what they are. Don't wanna be just a brain in a jar in a lab in South Hong Kong. No, I just wanna be a ghost and go ooh, ooh, ooh all night long. Don't wanna be a spook, 'cause that word's a little racist. Don't wanna be a mummy, I admit it, I'm an ageist. Don't wanna be a white walker, that's some of the fella's song. No, I just wanna be a ghost and go ooh, ooh, ooh all night long.
Great, so that was a clip of Ghost Quartet when I was at the McKittrick Hotel here in Manhattan. And that was the first time that you two worked together as a writer and director, I think, right? So
yes, as a writer and director, but we actually met, this is fun trivia, we actually met because Annie was Helene in the second workshop of Natasha, Pierre The Great Comet of 1812. And she was a wonderful Helene.
I did okay, but
You were great!
I obviously did not move forward with the show, but I moved forward with Ghost Quartet.
Yeah. And then Annie had been assisting Rachel, and so I kind of met her both through that, and then and And now here we are.
So can you tell us a little bit about what, for each of you, drew you to each other's work? Why you started working together?
Yeah, I can start. I think what was so pleasurable about working on Ghost Quartet, and what I know will be the same with Octet from what we've already made together, is that Dave is so incredible at making work that is as intellectually challenging and moving forward of the musical form, and also incredibly welcoming to his audiences. So you are processing a lot of new things in each of his shows, maybe for the first time, whether it's new kinds of narrative structure, new ways of musical storytelling, but you're also being handed a whiskey and being told, like, don't worry about it, it's gonna be fine, we're happy you're here. So I feel like with Ghost Quartet, with Great Comet, and with Octet, there is a sense of welcoming, even as the audience is being asked challenging questions and having to ask themselves challenging questions. And I love that. And Dave is so welcoming.
Oh, God. Yeah, and then in return, like, that is one of the things that I most love about Annie as a director, like that sense of bringing the audience in, and it's like never a cold room, it's always a very warm and inviting room. And then for me also, because Annie's a musician, like there's just like some certain kind of way of looking at theater that like comes naturally if you are a musician. So Annie sang in a cappella groups in college and has written music, and so like we speak a similar musical language, which is really nice. And then there's also just like a very wry, mischievous sense of humor that I really enjoy in all of Annie's work, which I feel like she really, really complements my work as well, and like really, we bring good things out of each other, I think.
Yeah,
That's great.
we're friends.
Oh, yes.
Hopefully you still will be at the end of October.
Oh,
no, I
God.
think
Yeah,
you
stay
are.
tuned, stay tuned.
So Dave and I first worked together when I was at LCT3 at Lincoln Center Theater on a musical that Dave wrote called Preludes. When I came to Signature a few years ago, I really wanted to bring a musical theater writer, and specifically Dave, to Signature. So for those of you who don't know, at Signature our mission is distinct because we commit to producing a body of work by each of our writers. So we have the writers in residence, and we produce at least 3 shows by each writer. So this is going to be, Octet is going to be Dave's first musical at Signature, and the first musical that we've ever produced at Signature. So it's a learning curve for all of us. And Dave, when I was first talking with you about what you wanted to start your residency with, you mentioned an a cappella musical. What was it that was appealing to you? A cappella, for those of you who don't know, means that there are no instruments being played. You'll hear a piano tonight, but really in the musical, it's orchestrated for people's voices. So the 8 singers are the instruments. But what inspired you to write an a cappella musical?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a dream come true. It's something I feel like always in my work, the vocal writing is the most exciting part of that for me. And that just comes from like my own musical education. I went to a high school that was just blessed with 2 incredible choral teachers. And so I was in the giant choir. I was also in like an 8-voice chamber choir. I was in a 4-part barbershop quartet. I was also in a jazz choir. So like so much of my musical education was through choral music. And then I was also in a community choir that my dad is now still a member of. And so like through that choir, I sang all these famous requiems. And so yeah, choral writing has always been a part of all of my musicals. There's always been intricate vocal harmonies. And like some of my favorite parts to write have been like the little, 16 bars of a cappella music that have happened in some of my musicals. And so when I started thinking about this particular material, there was something just so human about this material. And once we and we'll talk more about what this show is about, I guess, soon, probably, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the show basically takes place kind of at a 12-step meeting for addicts. And so there was something about the humanity of that and also the intimacy and privacy of that just felt like, there can't be a band. There's not going to be a band like over by the coffee machine at a 12-step meeting. So it felt like this was the perfect material to kind of get to indulge in. What if I just wrote a whole show that was a cappella? And so, yeah.
Great. And because, Annie, you have been in an a cappella group, and Annie was in an a cappella group with some of the actors who have worked on Octet.
Yeah, I think at least 3 of our cast, 3 of the 8, and one of our understudy performers were all in this group. I went to NYU, and it was a group called N-Harmonics. You can't be in an a cappella group and not have just the most humiliating name. For any of you who have done it, I dare you to tell me a good name. Yeah, so I feel so blessed that Dave asked me to do this, and it feels particularly fitting because I loved singing in group. It's really my favorite kind of singing. What a nerdy thing to say, but
totally.
Yeah.
And like weirdly for me, there's a bit of me that when I say a cappella musical, I know that means a certain thing to a lot of people in terms of like what genre that suggests, in terms of like Glee and Pitch Perfect and that world. And like strangely, that's actually like my least favorite a cappella music. So there are definitely touches of that in the show, but like I've been way more interested in listening to like Eastern European a cappella music and in listening to a lot of like gospel and spiritual music. Also like Meredith Monk and Toby Twining have been huge inspirations for this piece. So there's a lot of different styles of music. It just happens to all, literally be a cappella, and that there's just 8 voices singing it.
And are there things that you both have learned about creating an a cappella musical so far? We've done a couple of workshops of the piece so far. So what is it that you've discovered that you hadn't realized?
Turns out it's kind of hard.
Well, we have had 2 workshops of the piece. Each workshop was about a little under 2 weeks long, and in the second workshop I was like, okay, I'm going to venture into staging. And we're just in a rehearsal space, so there's no monitors. We don't have a conductor who will be conducting this piece. The performers are just conducting themselves. So I started staging one of the pieces, and they were all kind of facing different directions, and the song did quite instantly fall apart, which was my fault. I did not set.
Learning.
I didn't set our cast up for success in that moment. But it was a realization about what kind of sound technology support we would need, and also it's made me think completely differently about what the show wants to look like and feel like. And I have to feel really strongly about deciding to break the actors out of a circle, which is traditionally how you sing a cappella music, because in losing eye contact with each other, you're making a choice that everyone is going to really have to keep rhythm, keep pitch, and really focus without that connection.
I think another thing that I learned was that we need to have swings or understudies, which we generally don't have on our shows, but because the performers are really singing through the entire piece, it's hard on their voices, harder than a regular musical.
Yeah, because in a typical musical, even if you're singing in the ensemble, there will be extended sections where someone's doing a solo or the band is doing a dance break. So there are, in a 2-hour musical, you're maybe singing for 30 minutes total. But in this piece, everyone is literally singing for about 90 minutes straight. So it's pretty straining on the voices.
Mm-hmm. And
They're going to be great.
And the piece, as Dave mentioned, is about addiction and the internet and technology. So what was it that intrigued you about those ideas, both of you, and especially exploring them in an a cappella musical?
Sure. Well, I kind of got to this show in a weird roundabout way. I started making a show about Taoism, actually, is where this all began. Many, many years ago, and mostly based on this one particular Taoist writer, Chuang Tzu, who just writes these amazing and ridiculous things about life and philosophy. And one of the tenets of that book is that argument in general is ridiculous, because if something was clearly right, it would clearly be right, and there'd be no reason to talk about it. And if something was clearly wrong, it would be clearly wrong, and there'd be no reason to talk about it. So anytime you engage in argument and discourse, you're just like automatically doing something that's just folly. And so I was like really interested in that idea, and then specifically in that idea as it related to, and kind of where I started with this piece was looking at intelligent design debates. And so there's, in particular, there was one debate between Richard Dawkins, who's a famously annoying atheist, and then one of his colleagues who was a mathematician at Oxford, but who was a devout Christian, and they had a debate on God and on intelligent design and creationism and evolution and all this stuff. And it's an amazing. You can find it online. It's an amazing debate because Richard Dawkins loses just because he's just such an asshole, and it's just a beautiful moment of debate. But I just got really kind of sucked into reading those debates online and just seeing, and then just, furthermore in our current political situation, obviously there's just a lot of just people just butting heads online and just not really hearing each other and not listening to each other, and nothing's actually productive is happening. So anyways, the show about Taoism kind of fell apart for various reasons. I couldn't quite find my way into it, but this one nugget of this intelligent design debate really stuck with me, and I realized as I was researching it more and more that I was really interested in how discourse kind of unravels on the internet. And then there was another thread for me that was just seeing how the internet was affecting my own life and how it had become just such a pervasive element of my life, and how anytime either I heard specific internet things mentioned in songs or in theater, or that people started complaining about the internet in life, that I would instantly tune out. Anytime someone would sing Facebook in a musical the word Facebook in a musical theater song, I'd be like, oh God, that's so cutesy and annoying, and ooh, that's bad songwriting. Which is really profoundly strange when if you think of Facebook as something that we're really is a huge, huge part of our life, but it's there's some masterful thing that has happened to the way we all think about it that it's not fair game as a lyric for a song, because it just feels cutesy in some way. And then two, even though I feel all these negative things about my own internet use, as soon as I actually start talking to someone about negative things about the internet, I find myself being yes, but it's fine too, it's amazing also. I find myself instantly arguing with myself about it. And so both of these things led me to kind of realize that, oh, this is something I'm really interested in. It's something that scares me. I'm scared of making a work about this because I think it might be cutesy or annoying. And there's, Young Jean Lee is a playwright and theater maker that I really, really love. And she always says this thing, or she likes to make the piece that she least wants to make, the piece that she's afraid of making. And so that was kind of what I was feeling about internet stuff in general. And so then I made this show.
Great.
Yeah.
So the play takes place, or the show takes place, in a church basement. It's a support group, as Dave was saying. And at Signature, it's going to be in our Linney Theater, which is a flexible space, so it can be configured in different ways. So Annie, can you talk to us a little bit about what you and Amy Rubin and Brittany Vasta, who are our set designers, talked about in creating and conceiving of the world of this play?
Yeah. I was really interested in creating a space that was really devoid of technology, particularly modern technology, and I wanted to create a space where we felt like we could experience all the different years and all the different renovations that the space had undergone. So when you look at some of these photos that we're cycling through, you can see the remnants of a really old space, and perhaps a space that was formerly religious and is now more agnostic and serves a number of different groups. But yeah, just being able to see the history in each of these photos, and I love this photo in particular because under that paint layer there's something else, and there's some analogy in there for me about technology and how fast it moves and how quickly we kind of lay over and paint over our own processes with these technology. And I wanted to create a really human space where these 8 people could come together for 90 minutes and just focus on each other. So maybe we can go to our model box. So this is where we've landed. I'm really excited. So you can see we have 8 chairs in the middle of the space, which is where the meeting will start. And if you can see that first row of chairs, that's actually the audience. And I want our audience to feel like they are a part of this meeting, not necessarily to feel like they are being implicated, but that they are being welcomed to examine their own relationship to the internet in any way that they please. So I'm really excited about that bleed between audience and stage. And yeah, I think this space is just so funny to me. You can see the floor pieces of it. We'll have linoleum, like they were redoing. They got a renovation, but they didn't have enough money to finish it. So you kind of are stuck in between 2 different time periods. And I like the idea that this space would be used for multiple groups, and that after these 8 people have this profound night, like a karate group comes in right after them and just takes over the space. Which I find is so often the case, having rehearsed a lot in church basements. Yeah, so I think there's there's beauty and there's ugliness in this space, which I hope will be a little echo of what Dave is trying to do with the script.
Great. So Starr and Dave have worked together once before, I think, on a workshop of Dave's adaptation of Moby Dick.
Yes.
And-
Several workshops.
Yes.
It'll happen for real one day very soon.
Oh, good. Great. Looking forward to it.
Oh, look at that.
And Dave, you talk a lot about how specific voices inspire you. And can you talk about in Octet working with Starr and her voice? Starr, you've been in both workshops that we've done of Octet.
Yes.
So from the very beginning. And how do you write to people's voices? And specifically for Starr.
I mean, I have to say, like, that is something I definitely do, but I have to say, like, Starr is one of those musicians who is just like, anything you write, she's just gonna be incredible on. So I feel like with Starr, I just like write whatever I want. I just know she's gonna turn it into something just absolutely astonishing. And like what I love, I mean, Starr's like your range is just like so absurd, and like just like the rich low alto and the high little mezzo belt, and it's all good. Yeah. And Starr,
There you
I should
go.
say also, like, Starr is also an amazing singer-songwriter, and so I've seen her perform her own work several times, and like, there's, you know, I love working with singers who are also composers and musicians. Like, I feel like there's just a common language that we then share, and yeah, so just from like hearing Starr's own work, I like know kind of some of the tricks her voice can do, and so can write for her better, I hope. Yeah.
For sure.
Great. And Starr, you are such a skilled musician. What is it that has drawn you to Dave's music and also to performing an a cappella musical?
Well, Dave's music, I feel, has so much that it's something you can really sink your teeth into, to use a trite but appropriate expression. As a musician, you know, you end up singing all kinds of music and experiencing all kinds of music, and you start to get more curious about what your voice can do, and like how far can you stretch your ear, and like how do pitches relate to one another, and like and especially as a theater artist, how does that affect the storytelling or support it rather? And I feel like with Dave's music, there's never a moment where I'm like, this is just complex to be complex, because it's cool musically. It always has a point, and it always helps me as an actor and a storyteller to make my storytelling more rich. It's just more to like grab onto, and I'll be listening, even with Glow and before tonight, listening to it, I'm like, oh yes, that chord goes there for a reason. Or this rhythm has to be that way, or like if it changes, what does it say? And there are questions that you can ask of the music, and there's always an answer there. So that's why I really enjoy it.
Great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
So another element of the show that we'll see some visuals on now, but are tarot cards, which have played a real role, I think, in the inspiration for your writing,
Hey.
Dave, and play a role in the Octet as written. So can you talk a little bit about that, and we'll see some tarot cards on the
Sure.
screen.
I mean, it's a little, honestly, to this day, still a little mysterious to me. But this show, I mean, like, once I decided I was going to like write a show about the internet, there's just so much. And so when I started thinking about like, well, like, what could the different songs be? I just had like a kind of totally unwieldy list of like all these different moments that could happen and different things that songs could be about. And I found myself kind of at a loss, and I didn't really know how to structure this piece. And then I don't even know like how it came to. I've just always kind of loved tarot cards, and just like the imagery I find really, really beautiful, and just like that kind of spirituality really, really appeals to me. And so I think in like a fit of composer frustration, I just kind of started like playing with the major arcana and was like, ooh, like maybe this could help me like divine what the structure of the show will be. And that actually then happened, much to my surprise. So it kind of like ended up that these 8 cards, like in terms of like picking who the 8 people in the octet were, these were the 8 cards that kind of sang to me the most and felt the most like the people that you might run into on the internet or in various chat rooms and things like that. So yeah, I think, Paula, you're the high priestess, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And Paula also is kind of the person who runs the meeting, so there's kind of that element. And Starr is actually knows way more about the tarot than me. So I don't, what else does the high priestess stand for?
Well, the high priestess is a real channel for divinity, if you will, and kind of sits in a place of more observation as opposed to action, like the magician. It's more of a slower kind of, she is a processing place for divinity as opposed to being super active, and her observation then leads her to have wisdom to offer. But her personal process is very like intimate and deep, and it's not super exposed, which I think is very apropos for Dear Paula.
And the magician actually is the QAnon conspiracy theorist in the octet. And so various, and I think, the other thing that I realized as I was working on this piece is that, ultimately, like this show, like we say it's a show about the internet, but in a lot of ways it's really about just these 8 very lost people, and they're lost like in their own stuff, they're lost in their own addictions. And like, this song that you just sang, it's like, sure, that's a song about the internet, but it's also a song about like just a really messed up marriage. Like, it's just a marriage that's going through a hard time, and a guy who's clearly really depressed, and like that's what he's using to deal with his depression. And so something we've talked about a lot is about how all these characters feel really spiritually lost, and that we're kind of in a what was the statistic you found, that like we're in a time period where like people are less religious than ever, but actually more spiritual than ever. And a lot of like people, like young people in particular, are really looking to Tarot and like Wicca and like other things like that to just kind of find something to give them a sense of greater purpose, and like how you connect to the greater world. And like that is such a metaphor for what the internet is. It is connecting to the greater world. Yeah. Oh, and then the next slide. Oh, yeah. So then these are like the 5 group songs that the group sings. And like the Wheel of Fortune in particular is very much a card about, once the fool kind of goes, through the early stages of childhood and like meets their teachers and lovers and stuff, they kind of go into the world. And suddenly the world is just noise and hubbub and everything, and, fortunes and this giant wheel. And that felt basically like Twitter to me. So there's a song that is based on the Wheel of Fortune. And then the Tower is a really, key card in the deck, which is like that kind of moment when you kind of have to annihilate everything in your life in order to get through the other side. Yeah, and we kind of we start with the moon and we end with the world. Oh, the devil's in there too. Yeah. And then there's another slide. Oh yeah, and so this is how I wrote the show. So at one point I had all 23 cards of the major arcana like in the show, and then I just kind of assigned a scene to each of them, and then slowly like some of them started to overlap, and like eventually I would have let down to, so now that the show actually just has 13 scenes, but most of the cards are represented in one way or another. And then the different characters change at different times. Fugue. Yeah, there was once a song called Sick Burn, but I never wrote that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sorry. It was gonna be like, ooh, that's a sick burn. But that's all I had.
So promising.
One day.
That line still actually does exist in the show.
Is the line in the show?
Yeah.
No, I cut it.
Oh,
That's a sick burn.
burn.
No, I think that we cut that.
All right, well, if any of you saw the second workshop of Octet, you were the last to see.
No,
That's a sick burn. The first workshop of Octet.
So Kuhoo, you work on a lot of new work, developing and readings and workshops. In fact, I understand you were in a workshop this morning for about
Yes.
2.5 hours, first thing in the morning. So this
Yeah.
is her second gig today. But you also were in workshops for this piece. So can you tell us a little bit about, with new music and new work, how you approach the score and shaping character, and both as an actor and as a singer?
Sure. Hi. With Dave's works are so like visceral for me. And so I think a lot of new musicals these days, there's so much amazing stuff being written, but very often with contemporary music, it's very easy to kind of tune out and the words do the work a lot of the time. And with Dave's music, what is so wonderful is that every single little choice that he's making is informing who the person is and their energy. And something as like small as a perfect fourth can inform how they see things, which is why I'm such a nerd. But but it's true. And so, with this song in particular, it is so easy to like hop on that train and be transformed and really understand how she sees things. because of how the melody is constructed, and something as simple as a perfect fourth, you know, making it clear how the person's journey is outlined, and it makes it very easy. Yeah. Thanks. All of them. Well, in my part as a soprano one, because I'm a soprano one, and and I was a soprano two before, I had a lot of them. It was just really vacillating between those intervals a lot.
Ancient.
Yeah.
Fourths are ancient.
Ancient. We'd hate them. But it was, yeah. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
Well, it's time to wrap up, but we start
fast.
rehearsals soon for Octet, and previews begin on April 30th at Signature. All tickets are $35 with Signature's Ticket Initiative, and in fact, we're going to be selling our millionth ticket, subsidized ticket under the Ticket Initiative during Octet. So please come see the musical. And I wanted to thank Natasha Sinha for her really wonderful work on making this evening happen. And also Nina Matus, who's the president of our Board of Trustees and is here this evening and supported this evening. And also Duke and everyone at the Guggenheim. Thanks so much for having us here, and we'll see you upstairs at the cocktail reception. Thank you for coming.